here we are again. Have you announced?
Yes.
Have you?
Yes.
Oh. Well, friends, all knowledge is open to us. I have brought the Bumper Yogi book, which has all answers, in addition to which we might wish to venture into a few areas of ancillary interest. That's the day. That's a very powerful 15 minutes. 6 to 6:15 today. Did you find out? Oh no, you were gone. You were gone. Mm. What's the music? Yes, sorry about that. Something intruded. Just don't forget, ask Beryl about having babies, and ask Brenda about how to do knee exercises. All right, so what's it to be this evening? I know what, the inner meaning of the Bastille. How about that? You tell us. What does it all mean? Abreuve notion.
Another thing, could you talk a little more about the paradox between the alchemy in pranayama? There is the question of doing something and the question of letting go and let us breathe. It's a kind of opposite thing.
Real serious stuff.
Not the Bastille. You know that you will never ask me something about history.
The dreadful news is, not only have I got to go and talk at Indars, have I?
Well,
Am I let off? Pardon?
It's quite difficult to not.
Yes, all right, okay. I'm billed to talk on the growth of yoga in Britain. How about that? No, the development of yoga in Britain. Have they made that public notice?
Yes.
Oh, for God's sake.
It's on the programme.
So the alchemy of breath, is that what you said, madam? Anything else?
Yeah, something came up on a Monday night. You said it was a retreat type question. And that was about, we were talking about ego. And you said that not only did we ourselves have egos, but the bullet level had an ego. And also, it's a bit theosophical, the guardian angel had an ego.
Did I say that?
Yes, you did.
I wonder why I said that.
And would you say something more about it? It's a bit.
How did a guardian angel come into it?
That's what you said.
What were we talking about?
I don't know. I can't remember what, but I just remembered the question. It's been in the back of my mind ever since.
Kicky's having me on, Laura. Were we talking about guardian angels, John? So I'm trying to get out of this one too. Okay, Pete, what? What are we going to talk about tonight? Are possessions worth it, son? Renounce them all. Anything else? Come on, Pete, what is it? I know you want to ask me a question, so why don't you say it? It seems to me we can't begin to consider any of these questions until we first asked ourselves, what is a human being? So what is a human being? What is a human being? There are innumerable responses to this question. There are many expert responses. The experts are numerous. The information, the range of study, information storage, retrieval and interpretation is an indefinitely enlarging factor in human development. And it all becomes processed, conceptualized and jargonized. And many professions emerge to make available their expertise, their procedures and their processings. What is a human being? The zoologist would have, I'm sure, one definition, the anthropologist another, the economist another, the lawyer another, the poet another, And of course there are innumerable theologies that would produce a multitude of variable concepts. What really do we have to find out? What really do we have to experience? For human nature to fulfill itself, one thing is very obvious, that fulfillment cannot lie in the direction of attempting to expand in proportion to the expanding range of information. Fulfillment does not lie in factual accumulation. Maybe fulfillment lies in the reverse direction. We are the result of conditioning. Plus inheritance. The past has imposed by a chain reaction our physical state, our psychological orientation, and all the culture of the world to which we are heirs. Fulfillment surely lies in cognizing our roots, but having made the acknowledgement, and then perceiving the opposite to the root, that is the flower, the blossom, that which has the faculty, the facility, the need to open to the dawn. To open to an ever rebirthing light. To respond to the sum of life on all its levels. We are conditioned to believe in measurement. And we must believe in measurement, because measurement has a use that is indispensable. But measurement imposes a pattern. And is a human being a pattern? Or is fulfilled consciousness immeasurable? Obviously, we are structure. Obviously, we are amenable and necessarily so to all the processes of study that all the experts would make of the human entity, of the planet, of everything perceivable in the universe. And yet, from very early times, human consciousness was called upon to penetrate the limitations of conception as expressed in contradiction. To liberate ourselves from concept through the penetration of contradiction. This is, of course, a Zen device. But it was a fact of human experience long before something called Zen became known. And the most ancient contradiction is Aditi begets Daksha. I beg your pardon. Aditi gives birth to Daksha. Daksha begets Aditi. Aditi is indefinite expansion, limitless expansion. But space is curved. So however that expansion might manifest, the expanding universe, which was known to the ancients, by direct seeing, is diagrammatically expressed as a circle. And Daksha is the fire of life. Fire rises. Fire is the pivot. Fire is the column. Fire is the archetypal pattern that becomes the axis mundi, around which manifest life must revolve. The axis mundi is the Merudanda. The Merudanda is a straight line. It is the human spine, but it is the allegorical column that reaches from the earth to the sun, and far beyond and below the earth, to far beyond and below the sun. But space is curved. So this column of light and life that is the center will become the curve. that is the ever expanding circle and cycle of life. The one becoming the much and the more, and the much and the more and the many becoming a one. If we think in linear terms, as one discipline would have us do, or perhaps many disciplines would have us do, yogically, we would learn about the chakras as centers which are circles along the straight column of the Merudanda. That's one image. It cannot rest there. It must not rest there. And we are prompted and enjoined, surely, to know the opposite. If we look at what the philosophers have made, and rightly so, of the exposition of Patanjali, the levels of human growth, the stages of development, it makes sense. It represents a goal to be aimed at. It stimulates, perhaps, the harnessing of energy to reach an objective, to strike a mark, to become something, hopefully to become more. Because only by becoming more shall we know more. In the true sense, in the sense of fulfillment. But of course, there are other and opposite patterns. It's very interesting that in the earliest known teachings, the Vedas created an image of an activity. It was a ritual. What is such a ritual? Such a ritual. Obviously, we are not talking about anything that has relevance to the here and now, not in the ritual sense. But it was expressive, obviously, of the psychological content of those who devised, who manifested, who participated in these procedures. It was the projection, it was the objectification of realities that were known, realities concerning human consciousness, human unfoldment, human potential. And here we have represented not the linear only, not the column of ascent only, but the fire of life, perceived as centres of force in circular arrangement. The altar is the body of woman. Central to the altar is the sacred fire, which becomes thereby the centre of the earth, the centre of the universe. The focus of consciousness. But there are 8 subsidiary altars on which the light and the power of Agni is also manifest. So on the one hand, we have the teaching of the 8 stages of Patanjali in linear form, but in the other we have the circle expressing the cycle, and the 8 forms of Agni are the 5 elements plus the moon, plus the sun, plus the sacrificer. But these are now no longer perceived in terms of a linear ascent, either Patanjali Raja Yoga wise or Tantra Chakras wise, but here's a different image, the image of a circle. And matter, the elements in their various forms, and the heavenly bodies, and that higher intelligence that makes the sacrifice, all are part of a radius around, part of a circumference around the center point, which is the central fire. Isn't that interesting? No dance is possible up and down a ladder. But the dance of life will unfold from the center to its interactive manifest aspects. If there is the circle that is living, is the eightfold living being. Then there is the rasa. This was all concerned very vitally with life discovering itself, rejoicing in itself, seeking to know more of itself, breaking the barriers and the boundaries. But there is an interaction from the sun of life itself, which is the Supreme Center, to the manifold factors that are part of the whole, but equal parts of the whole, equal companions in the unfolding, equal partners in the glory of the dance. And it is a dance. It is a dance in which the manifest human entity is experiencing as a fact of reciprocal awakening the rising rhythms within himself and herself. And there was chant, and there was rhythm, and there was music. Several instruments were used. And there were the words of power. A great outpouring of living language, born on the breath of the gods. It's necessary, I believe, to go back to these fundamentals, to realize that there is no higher or lower. There is only the reality of the participation in the flow of being. The awakening from the center, the manifesting at the most extreme limits of perception and consciousness, and then the return to the source. Being opening, being diminishing, being flowing, in acknowledgement, in aspiration, in receptivity, in holding, bracing to the heart. But the two patterns are in one, because the fire on the central altar is the center of the world, is the axis mundi. Yes, of course we are the Merudanda, and maybe there are flows of energy along the center of our being. But equally, surely, we are not just the central focal point as individuals. We are the expansion, and we are that which is not limited to the polarity between the two. Because the meaning of the column and the circle is that, surely, expansion is experience, and focus is experience, and they are elements within the dance of life of the one being, the human entity. The periphery is the manifestation. The center is the fire of spirit. The one is ever becoming the other. On the in-breath there is the drawing into the column. On the out-breath there is the outflow, the manifestation. And there is that fact of cognition, that equilibrium in which there is the fruits of the pervading fruits of the fusion. The pervading fruits of the fusion. What is this experience? That is both the indefinite expansion into spaceless space, beyond all time, and the consuming glory of the inner fire at the core of being. And the nectar that pervades. And is the juice, the fruit. Of these indivisible contradictions. What is it? Within the human entity, deep, concealed, unknown, there dwells this inner flame of the Amritagni. The knowing of which is the awakening to the knowledge that brings the blossoming of all the factors, of all the levels, of all the elements. The earth and the sun and the moon, and the pervading breath of life. These are inner truths which awaken, which are fulfilled, and which dance into and through and beyond a consciousness without limit. The column and the circle the in-breath and the out-breath. Are not only factors in the fire of life and its manifestation. They are that fire, they are that life. And we, the human entity, are potentially the agony that ignites every level to become yes, that which fuses the divine and the organic. But also that which dances and rejoices on all levels in a way in which all factors, all elements are in union, in unison, in true integration, and all is one, and there is no higher and lower. There is only the unity of life in abundant rejoicing with itself. The fact of the Amritagni within the human being, within the earth, within the densest substance of the manifest universe, means inevitably that whatever the convulsions of evolution, the glory of life shall ultimately triumph. And all shall be filled with radiance. So it said, as the waters cover the sea. In our own way and in our own time, surely then, it's necessary to know that patterns are not there to be adhered to, but to be seen through. That concepts are not there to be imbibed, but to be utilized and transcended. That procedures, disciplines and training are never an end in themselves, but in a curious way are the means to the opposite. A human entity must discover itself. Must discover its breathing. Must become the sacrificer. That kindles and enhances the sacred flame. That brings about the birth of the fire of life on every level. A birth that is a relationship, an integration, and an extension, an embracing and a going forth. It cannot be contained within concepts. but to reflect, to meditate upon the ritual processes of the illumined minds of very ancient man, is in some degree to be in contact with their intentions, which were the fruits of their consciousness. For the ancient rishis were the poets and the prophets, who were casting their javelins into the future. Creating the organic roots from which, through which, future humankind would begin to need to know itself. Find its source, realize its being, to begin to breathe is to begin to see. To begin to breathe is to begin to know the rhythm of Dhyava Prithivi, the union of heaven and earth. To begin to breathe is to begin to find the source of life, the potential of life, the fulfillment of life. Then the human entity knowing its manifold flame becomes the chariot. Of the divine. The human ego becomes the companion, the discharger of right action, of the Buddhic being. Then the human ego becomes the vessel of life striking its own mark. Discharging the arrow into the far distance. That makes the great cycle and returns to the source. You and I are life. You and I are beings like all other beings, in which the Amritagni is imminent. You and I have the capacity to awaken. And not to know the truth, but to become the truth. Because we are the chariot, because we are the archer. Because we are the beacon in the night. And because we are the messenger of the dawn. Someone kindly remind me. How many planets are there around the sun? I forget. How many Gi?
I think it's seven. I think it's seven.
Yes, it's 7 planets around the sun.
No. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Ah yes, if you, yes, exactly. If you take into Pluto.
Yes, the ancients knew 7, didn't they?
And they included the moon, which didn't they? Left out everything called the moon.
Or was it 5 the ancients knew?
Well, no, they say 7, but they do that with Earth and they'd include the moon. They wouldn't have a Uranus. They'd have from up to Saturn, but they wouldn't have Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto.
The ancients knew Mercury, Mercury, Venus, Mars, what else?
Jupiter,
Jupiter,
Saturn,
Saturn,
Moon.
yeah.
I suppose they call it Sun and Moon, wouldn't they?
Yes.
And make that 7.
Yes. Yes. So excluding Sun and Moon,
Yeah.
they knew 5 round the...
Yeah.
And then two were discovered, weren't they? Making 7. Wasn't one discovered in the 18th century
It was Uranus.
and another in this century?
Well, Uranus was 18th, then Neptune last century, and then Jupiter this century. Pluto this century.
Neptune was found when?
Last century, something.
Last century. So if you include Earth, that's 8 planets around the sun, is that right?
When? Now?
Yeah.
No, you include Earth as 9. Including Pluto.
Uh-huh. Saturn is the Tamasic one, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, that's an interpretation of it. I mean, it would be Chronos, wouldn't it? It would be sort of that which limits and restricts, and yeah, so in that respect it would be Tamasic. But it's also interpreted as the initiator, the sun.
Hmm. I was quite interested that one of the names of Agni is Asani. And I assume, I don't know, that since the word for Saturn is Sani, Asani is the opposite. So that it's the opposite to Tamasic heaviness and non-activity, but strength and...
Well, if Saturn is Saturn,
yeah.
then also Saturn is lead, and from an alchemic point of view, Agni would be fire, and it would be the opposite.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Which gives us possibly an insight into what was meant by the level of asana in Patanjali. Asana, asini, asana, asani. Indicating vital physical entity as distinct from heavy and unproductive physical entity. Have you ever had any thoughts on astrology, Hugh? Are there any astrophysicist or astrochemist or astro whatnot scientists who give it any kind of credibility?
I think there are some.
Yeah, there are some. Are there? Hmm.
I think that the scientists were rather criticized.
So it wouldn't be too amiss if you walked into the lab and opened the daily paper and turned to the horoscope page and informed each of your colleagues what his destiny for the day was. I know the great Dr. Jung was interested in astrology, but that, I imagine, was his intuition at work rather than the left side of Dr. Young, would you think, Tony?
I thought so, yeah. Well, Newton as well.
Was he interested in astrology?
Oh yeah, he was the one who had that famous remark when somebody tried to put it down. He sort of turned to him and sort of looked down his nose and said, I have studied it, sir, you have not.
Oh.
That was one argument for one sort of skeptic demolished.
Oh. Newton was such an anathema to Blake that I had assumed he...
Yes, I would have thought so too.
Yeah.
But this I remember that.
In fact, as far as I remember, the two bêtes noires of Blake were Newton and Sir Joshua Reynolds, President of the Royal Academy. Just imagine being a Blake, born into the England at the cusp of the 17th, the 18th, 19th century. Just imagine that. God help us. Protestant England. Burgeoning industrial revolution England. Class-ridden England. I thought he was mad.